Thanks for having me today. And today I'll be talking to you about how it's important to have localized data models for smallholder farmers to ensure that we secure our future um, with food. Now, I suppose I'll first of all set the context. As has rightly been mentioned, 80% of uh, production of food produce in the sub-Saharan African region is by smallholder farmers. Yet they lack the resources and also the knowledge to farm optimally and profitably. Now, this is being a historic problem, but this problem is now it's much more an accelerated problem because of two things: climate change as well as a more fragmented infrastructure. If you think about things like climate change, of course, we are all well aware about things like flash floods and also forest fires that have increased significantly in the last few years. And when I speak about fragmented infrastructure, this is where the farmer is unable to connect with key resources across the agricultural production level value chain, and as a result, are unable to farm effectively. This is worsened by the increasing I guess the increasing level of urbanization versus rural development, because of course, when farmers require resources, these often tend to be in urban areas. Now, starting with climate change, first of all, how has this affected smallholder farmers? If you think about the Kenyan locust swarm, which occurred last in 2020, this significantly affected East African farmers, where they lost a lot of produce, and we have already seen that lots of research institutions, for instance, Harvard has set up a group of experts to try and predict the next similar event, because of course, if farmers were aware of this sort of risk, they could have been able to be better prepared to make sure they have the right structures in place to ensure that farm waste is reduced. Without data, without the understanding of these sort of trends, the farmer is really up against a real challenge. Similarly, we have the Zimbabwean mudslide, where the tropical cyclone Ida really impacted southern African countries, such as Mozambique as well, again, related to climate change. And actually, where I'm from, Nigeria has always also been affected by flash floods, so river floods. And this has impacted mostly the northern region, who represents the significant percentage of food growers in the country. So again, all these related to climate change, it's important for farmers to be able to understand what the risks are so that they farm differently from how they've done in the past. Because, for instance, with Nigerian river floods, this significantly impacts rice farmers, but if they change their method of farming rice, they're able to reduce the risks of this sort of event. Now, I'll move on to fragmented infrastructure. If you think about what farmer needs, first of all, farmers need to understand before actually putting any seeds in the soil to grow. Is my soil good enough for this? Should I be growing this produce in this area? So take, for example, a crop like cocoa. You should not grow cocoa in an arid area or a clay soil area. You should grow it in loamy soil. So these benchmark data is very important for the farmer to first of all know, okay, am I actually growing the right thing? And then once the farmer knows that what they're growing is right, then the next thing is to figure out, how do I get the capital to grow? Because if you think about Western and European countries, farmers often get subsidies and also access to the capital markets to fund farming operations. Smallholder farmers in sub-Saharan Africa do not have that benefit, typically because they don't have collateral and they don't also have a system to actually, some of them are unbanked. So how do you provide capital to someone who is unbanked? So this is a component of the fragmented infrastructure where farmers are actually unable to access the resources they need to farm. Also, unverified inputs. Countries like Kenya are doing a good job in terms of regulating inputs that are coming into the country for farmers. And when I say inputs, I mean the seeds, I mean the fertilizer. Now, if a farmer is growing a crop and they, unfortunately access a fake crop that the yield is much less than its typical yield. The farmer wouldn't know that until when it's closer to harvest. And if you think about all the time and effort the farmer has put into preparing the soil and the money that has been spent on labor, etc., all of that goes to waste if the farmer ends up growing an unverified input. This is why this is very important. And finally, the buying process for a farmer is quite complex. There's so many middlemen in the process that are not actually adding value. And as a result, the farmer ends up with such a low price versus the buyer. If we look at the cocoa industry, despite West Africa supplying more than 70% of global cocoa production, they have less than 1% of the billion-dollar industry. So this sort of, by linking all these key parts of the supply chain at the production level for the farmer, we can make farming more seamless. And of course, data is at the base level of that to make sure that, for instance, the farmer knows, okay, this is the produce I need to grow. This is how much it's going to cost. This is where I can get that sort of money. This is where I should get verified inputs. And this is who my buyer is, so I can sell to them directly. Now coming to the base level for the farmer. The key thing for the farmer is that we focus on at FarmStew, and also we find that it's very beneficial to the farmer as well, is to increase yield, reduce farm waste, and increase farmer income. I've already briefly gone through this in the sense where if the farmer is actually growing the right produce for the soil type, they're able to start a journey of making sure that the yield is at the level that at the right level, so above the average expectation of what that yield should be. This is a picture of some of the farmers we work with that are growing rice. So not all soil types take rice. So it's important for the farmer to at the base level understand this is the right produce to grow for my soil type. And then throughout the process, we then provide sustainable agricultural practices. So for instance, how do they reduce the use of chemicals by using organic matter to reduce pest infestation, disease infestation on the farm? All of this hand in hand with the aim of increasing the farmer's yield. And then when you think of farm waste, a significant portion of farm waste happens at the farm gate, usually because the farmer is unable to sell to a buyer. We actually had instances, particularly during the COVID pandemic last year, where farmers were unable to sell their produce due to logistical challenges that were exacerbated by the COVID pandemic. Now, with the data, with more seamless data between the buyer and the production, who's the farmer, then this can be eradicated, because before the farmer actually starts growing, they already have a verified buying order that they're growing towards. And this is not the correct practice that smallholder farmers embody. They usually just grow and grow without actually knowing, okay, I have a buyer on the other side that's going to purchase this produce, once I harvest. So changing that using a more seamless communication between the buyer and seller, where it's more of a pull demand cycle as opposed to a push for the farmer. And then ultimately increasing the farmer income. Again, this is me with one of our FarmStew team members. With a reduction in the farm waste and an increase in the farm yield, ultimately you can increase the farmer's income. And this has a lot of impact socially and economically, because again, going back to the cocoa example, there's been a reduction in cocoa planting and cocoa farming. Why? Because a number of cocoa farmers have been unable to economically sustain their families. So, they have, rather than being a cocoa farmer generation, we have the younger children going into other jobs they feel are more lucrative. So for us, it's really important for us to secure the food production for the next century, to empower smallholder farmers within the age group of 16 and 35 to grow optimally. So that brings me back to how farms do you use this data. We use data to help farmers with tailored agricultural expertise and also market access. So tailored agricultural expertise is where the farmer is being told, what to grow, how to grow, and where to sell based on their location, based on data that is specific to that farmer, with the focus on sustainable agriculture and food security. Similarly, market access through the platform. A farmer that has insufficient capital can apply for capital on our platform, have that capital deployed as a digital wallet on the platform, which reduces the default risk for the loan provider, the financial providers. And within the platform, the farmer can then use the money in the digital wallet to acquire inputs and finally sell their produce to an off-taker, thereby creating a digital infrastructure that supports the farmer across the production level from pre-farming to post-harvest. So I think I'll just end the note by saying 20% of the global population is estimated to be in sub-Saharan Africa by 2050. We are still a net food importing continent. Youth unemployment is going up, and agriculture is currently one of the largest employers on the continent. So for us, it's really important to start thinking about how to leverage the job force, the labor force, which is the youth, to go into agriculture. And this is why we're taking a technological approach that makes farming appealing, easy, and something for the generation of, or rather the age group of 18 to 35. So if you do want to join us in our journey, or you have any questions, any contributions, do reach out via our email at hello@farms2u.com. So I think that's my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions in the next 2 minutes and 45 seconds. I think that's what I have left. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aisha, for the great talk. The first question is, what's sort of the biggest obstacle to deploy these data models, and how is the reception of the local farmers so far? And maybe you can tell a bit more about that.
Sure. So if I go with the reception of the local farmers, first of all, what we found is that older farmers tend to be more stuck in their ways in terms of, this is how my great-grandfather farmed, this is how my grandfather farmed. And the learning curve is much steeper for the older farmers than it is for the younger farmers, 18 to 35, who is our target market, our target user. We're age agnostic, so you could be older than 35 and still access our platform. But who we're building for is the 18 to 35-year-olds. Significant proportion of them have lived through, the impact of Facebook, social media. So we find that they're very tech savvy, and they love the concept of actually being able to go on a farm and not having to rely on predated information on how to farm, but they can easily access it through their phones. All you need is internet connection and mobile phone to access our platform. Now, going to the challenges, there are infrastructural challenges that our platform can't solve, and ultimately FarmState can solve all the problems. But the idea is to create an ecosystem that makes farming more efficient. So some of the challenges is, for instance, low internet adoption. What you find is that in most of these rural areas, they only have access to 2G internet as opposed to 3G or 4G. Very rarely 5G. So what we find is that because of the spotty internet connection, that this can impact the user interaction on the platform. So what we do for that is make sure that we're building our platform in a way where the farmer doesn't always need access to the internet. Some of the information they have on the platform can actually be stored and stay. So this has gone into the product design. Other challenges as well, of course, logistics in terms of bad roads, poor transportation, but of course, continue to work with stakeholders to minimize and mitigate these challenges.
Thank you very much for the answer, for the detailed answer, especially.